What's happening, Hot Wheelers? Joe Motor here. Welcome back to the Motorhood. I've got a long overdue video for you here. Actually, I have a couple of videos planned, including a crack and yak of some of the stuff that's been accumulating over here. I'm waiting for a couple other pieces to arrive, and then we'll start cracking and yakking on this pile. But in the meantime, I thought we'd look at some vintage loose pieces that I've been picking up and meaning to share. But before we do that, I thought we would look at some old monster trucks for a couple of reasons. One is that my dad was cleaning out a storage unit and found a big sack full of old die-cast and toys of mine from a long time ago. So I had a lot of fun picking stuff out of that and thought I would share those highlights with you, most of which are these old monster trucks. But also because, you know, Greenlight's been doing their Kings of Crunch series, which is super fantastic, and thought I would show you some of these old vintage pieces kind of to go along with that. You know, Greenlight appropriately, for the first release in the Kings of Crunch, released several variations of the original monster truck himself, the Bigfoot 4x4x4, which of course was the star monster truck back in the 80s, and kind of was responsible for the phenomenon of monster trucks. And so I think this was pretty much the first release. These were done by Matchbox in the 1980s. They were called Superchargers, and they were licensed and unlicensed models. And this one, of course, the original Bigfoot, as you can see. You're also going to notice a few of these trucks have some modifications to them. I was also into model building and had a lot of model paint, so you'll see some really terrible modifications that I did to these trucks as a kid. Some worse than others. All these trucks usually came with a chrome plastic base and a die-cast metal body. But as you can see, I painted the wheel wells white, I guess to be a little more authentic to the Bigfoot truck. I also tried to paint the shocks yellow. So some of this stuff was sort of hand done, and some of it's pretty terrible. But the grill is missing from this truck, and I think I may have done that on purpose. Can't remember, but there's another truck back here that has the same issue, and I think I may have done it on purpose just because a lot of the trucks on the racing circuit regularly had body damage, and so I was probably trying to make it look more authentic and gnarly or something like that. But a lot of these original Matchbox pieces, you know, they had a little bit of steering, so you could make it look like it had the four-wheel steering, had a little bit of suspension and playability to them, not quite as much as the Monster Jam trucks that were released by Hot Wheels and now just Monster Jam, but they were still pretty cool back in the day. And as you can see, this is based on the old original sort of 70s Ford truck with the black roll bar. Pretty cool. And then another truck, of course, that was released by Greenlight around the same time in the first series. It's based on the same casting. It's the exact same casting, just the different livery for the USA 1 truck. And Greenlight's released a couple of variations of the USA 1 truck. This one has the grill still attached to it, so you can see what that looked like. And of course I had to paint the wheel wells white on this one, and tried to add a few other painted details on the base there. And these tires have gotten kind of sticky. They've been in a hot storage room for years, so they're starting to pick up all kinds of dust and metal flakes and stuff, so they're kind of nasty. But truck still looks pretty good, that old USA 1, based on the same casting. And then another truck that's based on the same casting that I hope will show up in the Kings of Crunch series is the Taurus, which I think was, Taurus had a pretty strong presence in the early racing circuit and show circuit of the TNT Motorsports Monster Truck series and stuff like that. So I hope that Kings of Crunch is planning on doing a release of Taurus. The original Taurus was one of my favorites, but as the racing circuit got going, Taurus actually became pretty popular and won a few championships, I think, as the truck got modified and the technology advanced. Really enjoyed the Taurus. It was one of my favorite trucks here. And as you can see, the grill has been removed from this one as well, and I painted in some black and the yellow shock details there. Also painted in the wheel wells and tried to paint the Goodyear white. Tried to give it some white lettering on the tires, but that was a disaster. And some other terrible paint details here that I'm not sure why I added. But anyway, I'm hoping this will make an appearance in the Kings of Crunch series for sure. I guess we do have El Toro Loco now in the Monster Jam circuit, but this was definitely the original Monster Bull in my book. So that was a cool one. And then they did some unlicensed models too in later assortments, like this one here, which is called the Dock Crush, which I'm pretty sure was not a real monster truck. But they were just using Matchbox castings and putting them on monster wheels, and they were still pretty cool. I always really enjoyed the authentic licensed trucks that were based on real trucks, but these got a lot of playtime as well. And some of the later releases of the Superchargers had better front steering, so it was a little bit more articulated in the steering, and I don't know, had it look like more authentic stance on a lot of those trucks. This one's just sort of based on the Matchbox sort of three-window Ford, I guess, casting. Not real sure, but there you can see the base, Matchbox base there. Other non-licensed castings that I thought were really cool from that series, this piece here, which was based on a Peterbilt tow truck, 18-wheeler tow truck. Really, really cool model. I wish this had been a real truck. Now, some of you may remember Super Pete. Talk about him in a second, but this piece was really cool, and I painted the wheels here too, I think, and added some decals to it. Of course, I added some terrible design to this for whatever reason. I thought that would be a good idea, but I don't think it was. I did it on the hood too, which really kind of just made it worse. Painted in the shocks too, but there was another Peterbilt truck, this one here, which was actually named Big Pete, and loved this piece. It had kind of a lime green color, really cool deco, and it was based on a dump truck. This is a plastic piece back here. But some of you may remember in those early monster truck days, there was Super Pete. It was a Peterbilt truck, and it was really one of the first trucks to kind of go wild on the racing and show circuit. A lot of the footage you can find on YouTube of Super Pete, like, just aggressively taking on a pile of cars and doing big jumps and stuff, and was kind of a sensation, and then he kind of disappeared. So these trucks were really cool because they weren't based on the actual truck. It wasn't a replica of that truck, but you can tell that they kind of, I don't know, it's probably just because it was called Peterbilt, but Big Pete was a favorite of mine for sure, and really loved the big rigs on big wheels. Would love to see some more of that taking place in the Monster Jam circuit. And I'd love, of course, to see Greenlight release a version of Super Pete in the Kings of Crunch series. That would be cool. Another sort of off kind of piece here was when they released these, which were kind of more of a mud bog monster truck series. The tires obviously had different tread on them to kind of, they're more appropriate for treading along in a mud bog. This one's called the Hog, and I really love the livery on this one. It's based on kind of a stock car with a ridiculous blown motor coming out of the hood there. But really cool graphics, got sponsor badges and stuff on it. Really enjoy this piece. I'm not much of a racer. Those wheels are pretty nasty looking, but the wheelbase is really short too, but it's still kind of an impressive looking piece. But they had a few different versions of the mud tire versions. But then you had some other, off brands like this one, the Road Champs version, cheaper, lighter. They weren't licensed. This one's called Flash. It was just sort of a made up piece, but they still made their way into my fleet here. I like the vintage graphics and the step-side Chevy model here. Plastic base, obviously, and the tires were a lot thinner rubber. As you can see, they're kind of falling apart now. But that was Road Champs took care of those. I think I had a few different versions of that. And then another off-brand, which is really cool piece, this one here, which is kind of looks more like a mud bog racer, but it's like a Baja Racer Bug. As you can see here, with some racing livery that's really, really well done. Sponsor badges on the side, which give it a really authentic look. And this sort of plastic piece coming out the back. A pipe coming out the back. Nice tread on the tires. It's got some suspension to it, which is cool. The shocks were already painted in, which is good. It's a good thing that I didn't ruin that on this one. You can barely see those shocks that are kind of painted in there. Then it has this cool little bouncy flag on the back. It's a plastic flag piece on a metal wire, which is pretty cool. And it's pretty cool. It's got some give to it. It's actually a pullback. So if I pull it back here, see if I can get it to go, it will go on its own there. So that's pretty neat piece there. Definitely worth keeping in the collection. A couple other pieces that were off-brand, and I actually don't know. In fact, I think this bug here was made by Mike Toy, M-I-C Toy, just in case you're wondering. Not familiar with that brand or what else they released, but they did a good job on that one. This one I'm not sure. This is called the Roadhog. Obviously a little smaller than the Superchargers, and even smaller than this little Mike Toy, but it just sort of looks like a 1/64 scale body on smaller tires, kind of a mid-sized monster truck, probably for mud racing or whatever. But it looks like a mean little Roadhog, doesn't it? Just black body with the red accents, big old motor coming out of there. It's got painted shocks also, and this looks like a mean, loud 4x4. But I don't know who the manufacturer is. On the bottom it does say Bronco, but it doesn't say anything else. So if you guys know who made these, you can let me know in the comments. The tire needs a little work. Another piece that I'm pretty sure is by the same brand is Thunder Beast, which is a yellow Dodge van, looks to be, with pipes coming out the side, big old red rhino charging on the side there. Got a black spoiler in the back, and shocks painted in there, which is pretty cool. Same wheel size and texture as the Roadhog back here. Got some nice suspension. It looks like it's been through the ringer a few times, but that's a pretty cool looking piece. And here we go again. It's really terribly done design back here. Gold paint that I tried to add, which that does not help at all. But you know, whatever. That's still a pretty cool piece though. But you know, my favorite supercharger monster truck pretty much of all time, I think it might be my favorite vintage monster truck, as long as we're talking about vans with the word thunder in them, and some of you may know where I'm going with this. If Greenlight Kings of Crunch brings this one back, then I'm going to have to break down and collect it, because I just, for some reason, this is my favorite vintage monster truck. It's the favorite supercharger. This is the Rollin' Thunder van, which was part of the original. There was this video that came out way back in the 80s called Battle of the Monster Trucks, and Bigfoot and Rollin' Thunder and several other models were involved in it, and they were all just really unique trucks, and they were racing on television for the first time, and I was just in love with Rollin' Thunder. I thought it was the coolest thing. And when all the trucks started to advance and become more you know, technologically capable of racing faster and doing freestyle stuff, Rollin' Thunder kind of disappeared. There was a Rolling Thunder truck version, which I think was totally different, but the van, the orange van, that's iconic van, just never returned, and I would love to see it return, either, you know, Monster Jam reviving it in some way, or if it shows up in the Greenlight Kings of Crunch series, I'm going to have to pick it up. But this version was one of my favorites, based on an old, this one's a Chevy van. I can't remember what the original Rolling Thunder was, if it was a Chevy or a Dodge. But it's not the same as this casting, but it's similar. And the thing about this one was it came with orange hubs. I didn't have to paint the hubs, so I already had orange on that, but I did add some decals. As you can see, the Valvoline and Moroso decals I added. I painted some shocks in as well. But dang, I love that Rollin' Thunder. And then another one of my favorites, of course, you might be thinking about, Awesome Kong 2. Which, again, just an incredible body style, the step side forward, which didn't make an appearance very often. It showed up in some of the very early videos, very early shows and races, but I think it had a wreck. And then if you were familiar with the Dane brothers, they were the brothers that kind of owned those trucks. I think this truck must have had a wreck, or he rebuilt it or something, and it had a really reduced, reductive body style. He almost didn't recognize it. And the King Kong evolved into King Kong 2 and King Kong 3, and then the Danes kind of disappeared from the circuit, and it's a shame, because the King Kongs and the Awesome Kongs were just staples, and they always gave Bigfoot a run for his money, even in that early video. So if you look at that early video of Battle of the Monster Trucks, I'll try to put a link in the description. You'll see this version of Awesome Kong 2 racing against the original Bigfoot in the final, and Awesome Kong was just amazing. The tires were huge. This body style was amazing. The red color, it was just a really, really awesome truck. It was adequately named. I really hope we see a version of this in the Kings of Crunch. You can't really have King Kong without Awesome Kong, and it's great that Kings of Crunch released King Kong, the original. But like I said, I'm hoping to see the Kings of Crunch series evolve into some of the later trucks in the early racing series, and hopefully they will vary their castings a little bit as well, so that we can really see the full range of some of those great trucks that started the whole phenomenon of monster truck racing. And just finally, as a bonus here, I found this thing, which Matchbox also made. This was the tractor pull trailer that they put out. And if you ever went to a tractor pull, those modified tractors and 4x4 trucks and funny cars would try to pull this weighted trailer as far as they could, and those were usually accompanied by a monster truck show or a monster truck race. And I forgot this thing even existed. I don't know if any other diecast companies made one of these, but wouldn't that be cool if Greenlight released tractor pull series or something like that? They're already releasing trailers and hitch and tow anyway, so it'd be kind of cool to see a vintage series of the old tractor pull pieces in addition to the monster trucks. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at the old monster trucks. I certainly enjoyed pulling them out of the bag and taking a look at them again after many years. And if you just subscribed to the channel, thanks and welcome to the Motorhood. I'm glad to have you around. And if you've been subscribed for a while, I appreciate you continuing to check out the videos and hang out with me here in the Motorhood. Got a couple of videos coming up, so I hope you'll stay tuned. Thanks again for watching. Keep on motoring. We'll see you in the next video.